All right, my lovely first graders. Today's lesson is called The Tale of Peter Rabbit. All right, and we're going to do it in 2 days. Today we're going to read the story, and then tomorrow we are going to do our reading comprehension questions and our word work and our assignment. All right. So we are going to review the morals of 2 different folk tales. We're going to explain the moral of a folk tale. We're going to demonstrate an understanding of the word mischief. Okay, and when I say that, I just mean we're going to be able to define and use the word mischief. We're also going to retell a folk tale. Okay, our key vocabulary today are exert, mischief, naughty, sobs, and thief. And I bet you know a few of those words already because you guys are very smart. All right, exert. Exert is a verb, all right? And it means to make a strong effort or to try really hard. The runner thought, if I exert myself, I can make it to the finish line. Okay, so the runner's thinking, if I try really hard or if I put in a lot of effort, I can make it to the finish line. Okay, so exert means to try really hard or to make a strong effort. Okay, this is the word mischief, and it is a noun, all right? And mischief is behavior that causes trouble. I want you to go ahead and I want you to look at this picture. You should recognize that book. That is No David. We read that together, all right? Now I want you to look at this picture, and I want you to look, what is David doing? Look at what he's standing on. He's standing on some books. Are you supposed to stand on books? Absolutely not. You are not supposed to stand on books. So is that behavior that causes trouble? Standing on books? It is. What is he grabbing? He's grabbing the fish tank. Is that behavior that causes trouble? So David is causing mischief right now, isn't he? He's in mischief. All right, Mrs. Rabbit told her little rabbits not to get into mischief while she was away. That is another way that we could use it in a sentence, right? The next word is naughty, and naughty is an adjective, all right? And it means bad or mischievous. A way that we could use it in a sentence might be, Jalen did a naughty thing and put worms in his sister's shoes. Ugh, that's disgusting. Please don't put worms in your sister's shoes. That's gross. Don't put worms in anybody's shoes. That is bad or naughty. And I put a thumbs down because if we were in the classroom and you did something naughty, I would give you a thumbs down for your behavior, right? Because if your behavior is bad, then you're being naughty, right? Okay, our next one. Our next word is sobs. Did I trick you? Our next word is sobs, and it is a noun. Sobs are sounds made when someone cries very hard, okay? So that's what I was doing when I came to this slide. I was sobbing. I could hear the sobs of the little boy who was looking for his lost dog. Yeah, I would definitely sob if I lost any of my pets. I would be very sad, and I would probably make a lot of boo-hoo sounds. I would be sobbing. Our last word is thief, and thief is a noun. A thief is someone who steals, okay? You could also think of the word robber. Thief and robber, they're the same thing. They're both people who steal, okay? The police officers caught the jewelry thief. Well, hooray, because it's not good to steal, and I hope the police officers caught him. All right, let's review a little bit. What folk tales have we read so far? Now, don't get tricked because remember, we've read a lot of stories, but some of them were fables and some of them were folk tales. Remember, our fables are going to be our short stories. And our folk tales are going to be our longer stories, but they both have personification, which means animals that might act like humans. And they both have a moral or a lesson, right? And they're both fiction. But remember, folk tales are our longer ones and fables are our shorter ones. So which folk tales, which longer stories have we read so far? The Little Half Chick or Medio Pollito and the crowded, noisy house. Okay, so what was the moral or lesson from Medio Pollito? What did we learn in that one? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Exactly. Remember, because Medio Pollito, he did not want to help the water or the fire or the wind. And then when he needed help, the water, the fire, and the wind did not want to help him because he hadn't helped them. Okay, so do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That was the lesson from Medio Pollito. What about the lesson from the crowded, noisy house? What was the lesson in that one? Not to get so upset when things are going badly, because it could always be worse, right? Because remember, the poor Jewish man, he was upset because he thought that his house was too crowded and too noisy, and everyone was always crying and kvetching, which means complaining if you forgot. And he thought that it was horrible, right? And he was very upset. But then the rabbi told him, bring all of your animals in the house. And then once it got too crazy and the poor Jewish man realized just how bad it could be, that he could have a cow in his house eating their curtains. He could have a goat headbutting things and breaking things. And he could even have a goose in his house flapping its wings and going honk, honk. And even pooping on his floor. Ew, disgusting, right? So he realized that things could always be worse. Okay, that was the lesson that he learned. Now, this question's more for you, okay? I want you to think about it and tell your family members or a stuffed animal or a pet or something, okay? How were those lessons? How are they similar or the same? And how are they different? Okay. So the lessons, remember, we had do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And then also things could always get worse. So I want you to think, how are those the same and how are they different? And I want you to pause the video and go talk about it. Go. All right. So there could have been a whole bajillion different answers for that one. So we're not going to go over that one. All right. Let's get started into our background information so that we can get to our story. I love this story. Okay, today you're going to hear the tale of Peter Rabbit, okay? And the author and illustrator of this story is a woman named Beatrix Potter, all right? So Beatrix Potter wrote the story and drew the pictures for the story. Have you heard of this story, The Tale of Peter Rabbit? Have you ever heard of this story? What about Beatrix Potter? Have you ever heard of her? Maybe. So I want you to look at this illustration. Hang on. I'm going to move my video so that you can see better. Oopsie, I didn't mean to do that. I want you to look at this illustration and I want you to tell me, what do you see in it? Okay, so what do you see in this part? I see a big bunny rabbit, maybe a mama, and then I see some little baby ones. And it looks like they're under a tree, maybe. It kind of looks like maybe they're in a forest. Maybe that's the setting. And then over here, I see, once again, like a mama rabbit. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 baby rabbits. Oh, hang on, guys. I see some math in our CKLA. How many do we have over here? We've got 3, right? Plus 1 gives us how many baby rabbits? So 3 here plus the 1 here gives us how many baby rabbits? 4, right? 3, 4. What if I was going to ask you how many rabbits do you have all together? So we've got our 4 baby rabbits and 1 mama rabbit. So 4, 5. Sorry, I love math and I love it when we can find math in our other subjects. So I just wanted to share that with you. Anyways, what do you notice about these rabbits? About these 3 baby rabbits? What do you notice? They have red jackets, right? What about this one? He's got a blue jacket, right? And what do you notice? What are these rabbits doing? They're looking at their mom, maybe listening to their mama. And is this one doing the same thing or no? Not really. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you this right here. This is our main character. His name is Peter. All right. Wait a second. I forgot. Can somebody please tell me what a main character is? What does a main character do? What's a main character again? What makes a main character so special? Right. A main character is who the story is about. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so this is our main character, Peter Rabbit. What do you know about rabbits and the kinds of things they do? Like real life rabbits, like rabbits that you might see outside. What do you know about them? Okay. So rabbits are small animals that are herbivores, okay? That means they only eat plants. Can you say that word for me? It's kind of a weird one. Herbivore. One more time. Herbivore. And an herbivore is an animal that only eats plants, no meat. Okay. Rabbits sometimes build a nest on the ground hidden under a thicket or a bush. Okay. So in today's story, you're going to hear, today's story is a fiction story. Okay. So that means it's made up. But sometimes Peter Rabbit does things that a regular rabbit might do. Okay. So I want you to listen during the story, and I want you to think about, are these things that a real rabbit would do, or is this part of the make-believe part? Okay. So we're going to start our read aloud. Remember, I want you to listen very carefully for our vocabulary words. Our vocabulary words were exert, mischief, naughty, sobs, and thief. Okay. And if you hear one of those words, you're going to raise your hand so that I know you're listening and you're you're listening for those vocabulary words. Okay. I also want you to listen carefully to find out what the moral or lesson of this folktale is. Okay. So let me flip to the right page. All right. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a big fir tree. So, who were the members of the rabbit family again? Who do we have? We had Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, Peter, and then who else? Mama, right? Okay. Now, my dears, said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Uh-oh. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I am going out. So what does Mrs. Rabbit tell her children not to do? What does she say not to do? She said, don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden, right? And what else did she tell them? Don't get into mischief, okay? Do you remember what mischief means? Mischief is behavior that causes trouble, all right? If you get into mischief, that means you're doing something that causes trouble or doing something that you shouldn't be doing, okay? Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Why do you think Mrs. Rabbit bought 5 currant buns at the baker's? Oh, get ready. We're going to do some math here. She had 4 babies, right? She's got 4 babies. Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. And who else? herself, right? So 4 babies plus 1 more gives us 5. That's why she got 5. 1 for every single one of the bunnies in their family. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. So who is good and listening to their mom? Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. So who's being naughty or making bad decisions? Peter Rabbit, right? He is not listening to his mama's directions. What do you think is going to happen in Mr. McGregor's garden? What do you think? Do you think he's going to get baked into a pie? Let's find out. Oh, oops. That picture was from before. Sorry. Now we're on this one. First, he ate some lettuces and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes, and then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. Do you see the picture where he's holding his belly? He's going, "Oh, I don't feel so good. Maybe he ate too much." Do you think that's why he's feeling sick? Because he ate too much? Maybe. But round the end of a cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? What do you think is going to happen now that Mr. McGregor sees Peter? What do you think is going to happen? Let's move me down here so I'm not in the way of your picture. Oopsie. Sorry. Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake in the air and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Oh, hang on, let me say that again. Listen carefully. "Stop, thief!" Do you remember what a thief is? A thief is someone who steals. Why does Mr. McGregor call Peter a thief? What did Peter take from Mr. McGregor's garden? What was he eating? His vegetables, right? How do you think Peter's feeling? Go ahead and look at this picture right here. Look at Peter. How do you think he's feeling? I think he's probably feeling kind of scared, right? Okay. Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. Uh-oh. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages and the other shoe amongst the potatoes. So what happened to him while he is so frightened? He's rushing and he loses his shoes, right? And he doesn't remember where the gate is. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he might have gotten away altogether if it had not, unfortunately, been for the gooseberry net he got caught in by the large buttons on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Uh-oh. Do you think he's going to be able to get out of the net? Look at him. He's all tangled up in that net. What do you think? Do you think he's going to be able to get out? Let's see. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows who flew to him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself. So remember, sobs are the sounds sometimes made when you're crying. Remember? Those are sobs. Who heard Peter's sobs and encouraged him to exert himself or make a real effort to wriggle out of the net? So who heard him and came to help him? Look at the picture if you need a reminder. Yeah, the little sparrows, right? All right. Mr. McGregor came up with the pot, which he intended to pop upon the top of Peter, but Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him. So was he able to escape? Was Peter able to escape? What did he leave behind? his jacket. Do you see it in the background over here? Still caught in the net. Also, while we're looking at the pictures, look at poor little Peter's little tears from when he was sobbing. Poor Peter. He should have listened though, right? His mama told him not to. He rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it hadn't been so full of water. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath the flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking underneath each one. Okay, so here you can see Peter jumped into that watering can, right? And then you see the splashes of water because it was full of water. Now Peter's probably all soaking wet. Ugh. And then over here you can see this is Mr. McGregor, and he's looking underneath each of those pots. Now I want you to look in this picture. Do you see anything in this picture? Maybe over in this area. What do you see over here? I see a watering can. Do you see anything sticking out of that watering can? Maybe two little bunny ears. Okay. Peter sneezed. Achoo! Mr. McGregor was after him in no time. So where was Peter hiding from Mr. McGregor? In the watering can in the tool shed, right? Did this work? Was it working? It was, right? Until what? Until what happened? Peter sneezed. Mr. McGregor tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out of a window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter, so he went back to his work. That was a close call, wasn't it? But Peter got away from Mr. McGregor for a little bit, at least for a little bit, right? Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright. That means he was shaking. And he had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in that can. After a time, he began to wander about, going lippity, lippity, not very fast, and looking all around. What do you think he's going to do next? Look at how wet he's dripping. You see his little puddle from dripping water? He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Oh, poor Peter. Look, there's the little mouse, and there's Peter crying because he can't get out. Do you think he's crying only because he can't get out? I think he's probably crying because he knows that he's going to be in trouble, and he probably misses his mama. He's probably still scared, right? Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Then he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. Why do you think that Peter does not want to ask the cat for help? What do you think the cat would do if Peter asked it for help? It might eat him, right? He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scritch, scratch, scratch, scritch. Peter scuttered underneath the bushes, but presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned toward Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Do you see the gate in this picture over here? And there's little Peter in the wheelbarrow, and in between Peter and the gate is Mr. McGregor hoeing the onions, right? Do you think that Peter's going to be able to get out without Mr. McGregor seeing him? See. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could go along the straight walk behind some black currant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the woods outside the garden. So Peter made it. Woohoo! Go, Peter! All right. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Whose shoes and jacket is that? Those belong to Peter, don't they? Peter never stopped running or looked behind him until he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down on the nice, soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. Do you see Peter flop down? And his mom was looking at him like, where are your clothes? Where are your shoes? So why do you think Peter's so tired? Because he was running around all day, running away from Mr. McGregor. I'd be tired too. Also because he had kind of a rough day, right? All right. Also, if this is the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter has lost, do you think that Peter has gotten into mischief before? I definitely think it's possible. All right. Okay, do you see Peter in this picture? Do you see him? Where is he? He's in his little bed, right? I'm sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter. 1 tablespoon to be taken at bedtime. So why was Peter not feeling so well? Maybe he ate too much. Maybe it was because he had a rough day. Do you think his mama knows what happened? What do you think? Do you think his mama knows what happened? I think she probably does. I feel like mamas always know. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. That sounds like a yummy supper. Look at them over here enjoying their food. So why do Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail get to have a nice dinner? Because they weren't full and because they didn't run around all day, so they were feeling fine enough to eat dinner, right? All right. Does this story teach a lesson? It sure does. What is the lesson that it teaches? To listen to your parents, right? Or to listen. All right, guys. Do you think that Peter learned his lesson? I sure hope so. I hope he learned his lesson because who knows, if he does it again, maybe he'll end up in a pie. And that would be bad news bears. All right, sweet peas. I will see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you loved this story as much as I did.